With cameras like the Pocket 4K, almost anyone has access to a cinema camera these days. But the question is it the right tool for the job? Here are a few lessons I've learnt from using cinema cameras, and hopefully they can help you make your decision on whether or not you need a cinema camera. Handheld footage can give an immersive feel to your video, but it needs to look natural, otherwise it becomes a distraction. Cinema cameras usually have a fast sensor readout, and they're quite heavy. These two things combined make footage look natural. Take a look at this and you'll see what I mean. Clearly the cinema camera looks better. There's minimal distortion due to the fast sensor readout, and the weight eliminates microjitters which you'd usually get from a lightweight camera. Even with image stabilization, the handheld movement just looks more natural on the cinema camera. But the handheld stability does come at some costs. To carry around a cinema camera, you're going to need a dedicated camera bag, much bigger than those used for mirrorless cameras. Other equipment like tripods and gimbals are going to need to accommodate for the higher payload. This significantly increases the overall size and weight of gear that you'll need to carry around. But cinema cameras make up for this. Once they're set up, changing settings is fast. Internal ND saves so much time if you're just changing lens or changing exposure. Dedicated controls for changing settings without menus also speeds things up. Exposure tools like waveform, false color, and advanced histograms make accurate exposure measurements so much easier. Some of these features have trickled down into mirrorless cameras, but I think internal NDs probably will never come because the sensor stabilization used requires space for the sensor to move, and an internal ND mechanism would block that sensor movement. Less of the features within a cinema camera are automated, so it's down to the operator to manually configure them. An example of this is sensor calibration, which will change depending on the environment. Also, things like manual focus require a larger monitor and fine-tuning for each shot. Another thing you'll notice is the time from turning on the camera to recording seems so long compared to a mirrorless camera. If you're using something like a Red or a Pocket 4K, you'll also need to spend time building the rig too. If you've never used a cinema camera, just know that all these little things really add up to a much longer setup time compared to a mirrorless camera. Things like high dynamic range, strong video codecs, and a low rolling shutter all contribute to the high quality footage that you get from a cinema camera. One of the main reasons for this is purpose-built hardware optimized for shooting video. Things like fans which keep the sensor and processor temperature under control so the electronics can produce a clean image. But with modern mirrorless cameras, the quality is catching up. Someone who has a deep understanding of how the camera works can produce images very close to a cinema camera. Cinema cameras are great tools, but they're not always the right tool. If you're considering whether or not to use one, take a look at this blog post which might help you make a decision.